And we're going to turn now to the Daily Telegraph, and it is continuing the coverage of recent days over accusations that Labour MPs were paid to be Cold War spies, accusations that have been vigorously denied, we should say.
Very vigorously denied. But again, we see somewhat similar to that Donald Trump story we were talking about just before the break. We see something where even the best case scenario is not a very good look for senior figures in the modern Labour Party. The worst case scenario is that this particular former Czechoslovak agent's allegations about money and intelligence changing hands are true, although, as you say, those involved deny them. The best case scenario, which as far as I can see is the Labour Party's official defence about this, is that in the 1980s, at the height of the Cold War, people like Jeremy Corbyn, people like Ken Livingstone were meeting diplomats, so-called, from various Soviet bloc countries and the Warsaw Pact countries and behind the Iron Curtain, sitting down with them in Parliament, in other places, people who had very interesting questions to ask about what went on in Parliament and around politicians. And they were too stupid to realise the people they were talking to might be reporting back to the dictatorships that they worked for. That is not a good look in the best case scenario. So it doesn't seem like this story is going to stop.
No, it's almost farcical, because I'm trying to imagine Jeremy Corbyn in the mid-80s talking to a man who said he was a diplomat called Lieutenant something or other from the embassy, and not working out that that person was quite plainly a spook, because we all know that they work as diplomats in the embassies in foreign countries. And James Bond was an unusual example.
And actually, when you mentioned James Bond, one of the denials from the Labour Party was that this is like the plot of a very, very bad Bond movie.
But here's the problem.
Dull Bond movie.
James Bond was opposed to the communists, whereas this isn't the allegation. There's amazing defence from Ken Livingstone, who said it's a tissue of lies that he ever met this Czechoslovak diplomat, but he did meet, quote, a Russian representative. Well, who on earth do you think Russian representatives were in the Cold War?
Yeah, he didn't meet with the Czechs, he did meet with the KGB, apparently. So it's just bizarre, but kind of, it's a bit of me wondering what on earth they could hope to have got out of Jeremy Corbyn or Ken Livingstone in the mid-80s. They weren't right at the heart of power. They're not able to tell them about MI6 operations. They were plainly going along to try to get some of the Czech whiskey at the embassy and go to the drinks parties, and probably having their egos stroked.
And to hang out with the agents of a dictatorship that they thought was cruel to be friends with.
But also, the reason why the story is going is that, you know, it does do a lot to attack Jeremy Corbyn's credibility as leader of the Labour Party and those around him. But whether or not the supporters of Jeremy Corbyn will care, his supporters, who are generally younger, and generally the Corbynistas, whether they are going to give much of a monkey's about what happened 30 years ago. The people who are going to care, the ones who remember the Cold War and realise the importance of it, I think younger voters aren't going to give as much of a toss as some of the older ones.
I agree with you about that front. There are certainly more modern, more relevant concerns, like the fact that 5 years ago Jeremy Corbyn was doing paid work for the propaganda channel of Iran, a country which hangs gay people. That, to me, I think is probably more concerning to young voters. But this does still matter, and unfortunately it's part of a lifelong story for Jeremy Corbyn, in which, in the best case scenario, he turned a blind eye for reasons of ideological convenience to a whole series of very nasty people.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.